Hello, my friends, and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming, and in today's video, I'm going to help you get the very best start possible in Rise of Kingdoms. And although my account is very old, I've been playing for over 6 years now at this point, with 2,375 consecutive days logged. I've played in some of the biggest KVKs the game has ever had and logged over 33 billion kill points. I'm not the master of the early game, which is why I've got some guests tonight that are. In fact, I've got Vast representing the Shogunate, a group that is starting on May 31st. You'll find their information down below in the description, but they have spent a ton of time studying the process for getting the best start possible in the game. So today we're going to talk about 3 things, and you can use the timestamps to jump to whichever part you'd like. The first thing we're going to talk about is just a very brief history of what some of the best processes were for getting a fast start in the game. Then we're going to talk about a very recent rule change that makes some of those processes no longer work. It's important to talk about this because you'll see videos that are out there on YouTube, including some of my own older videos, that will no longer be a working process because of this one change that is just happening now. Then we'll talk in depth about the best process. And again, to do all of that, we've got Vast on the call. Hey, welcome aboard, and thanks for taking the time today. Explain this to everybody.
Yeah, hey everyone, I'm Vast. I am the founder of the Shogunates. And yeah, thank you for having me, Chisgule.
Hey, cheers, man. And I do want to give a big shout out to Chill Indra, who spent a bunch of time chatting with me and getting this all set up. And unfortunately, he couldn't make this call now, but I really appreciate your taking the time. So let's talk about the early game process, man, because let me tell you, if you just downloaded Rise of Kingdoms and started playing the game, you'd think, like, what more would I need to get a good start, right? Like, I could watch a YouTube video and figure it out. But no, it's not that simple. Up until this moment in time, there were actually some really incredible tricks you could do to get a massive jump over everybody else. So a couple of those processes that I was aware of is something called a jumper group and another thing called a sleeper account. Could you just like very briefly talk about what those things were or are?
Yeah, no, of course. So jumper account, very simple. You would make your account and you would stay in that kingdom for an upward to 7 to 8 days, upward of 10, but you don't want to get close to 10. So you would stay in that kingdom for 7 to 8 days. Now, the sleeper process is a little more complicated. It is a 20-ish day process where you would make an account in a kingdom. You would stay there for, like I said, 20-ish days, and then you would use a passport page item to migrate to a kingdom that is 10 days old.
Okay,
very brief.
The sleeper process, you use a passport to migrate back to a younger kingdom. The jumper process uses an item that, spoiler alert, will no longer be available. It's a beginner's teleport to go back to a kingdom that's no more than like 10 days younger than yours, right?
Yes.
And up until this moment in time, doing one of those two processes was just advantageous. Like with a jumper, you're getting at least 10 days of progress. It came with some downsides, like you couldn't power up beyond a certain amount. And like, you know, there were downsides to it, but it's mostly just upside, right? And yes, with the sleeper project, you can actually go to a sort of like higher amount of power, but then you need some passports and you migrate in. But as I understand it, migrating into any kingdom is somewhat limited these days. Like there's a limited number of spaces for migrants, right? So you can't actually have everybody do the sleeper method and have hundreds of people because that just doesn't work, right?
Yes, there's that, and there's a limit on the kingdoms you could start in with the sleeper process, compared to where you want to be. Has to be within 10 days. Kingdom has to be 10 days old.
Yeah.
And depending on which kingdom in the continent you want to go to, you can be in upwards of 25 million power or 10 million power.
Okay.
Depending on if the kingdom has the early game star or not.
Right. I'm looking at the star kingdoms now. just to get a sense of that. But until the start of season 2, governors with more than 10 million power cannot immigrate to the top 25% of powerful kingdoms in the region. So, anyways, all that to say, the way you get advantage in the early game is by getting extra days of time before landing in a kingdom that's your final kingdom, and everybody else in that kingdom is starting that day. So you just have days of advantage and accumulated stuff, which like obviously is powerful. So they made a change, and I might even have this mail saved. It was a system mail. I was fighting in KVK, so actually I don't know if I'll be able to find it through all the mess. But they made it so that you can no longer get a beginner's teleport. Is that right?
That's correct. As of March 26th, the beginner's immigration item will be suspended.
Okay, there it is. I
So,
just found that mail too.
yeah.
Okay, so this is the big change. And this changes a lot, actually, about how a group would be formed and like what things you might do as a new player. And just to touch on this very briefly, I personally think this is a great change. And I know that anyone who is about to do a jumper project would be obviously somewhat distraught that like their plans are uprooted. But if you think about this purely from the perspective of someone who has just downloaded the game, like it's got to be weird to like be in a kingdom and you're competing with people who just like mysteriously just seem like better than you, and they're like, oh, I'm free to play, I didn't spend anything, and you're sitting there like trying to progress as much as you can, and like you can't compete, and it's like, okay, so I think it's good to level the playing field, to put it very simply. You shouldn't need like a PhD in rockology in order to start playing the game and feel good about it. So I think it's generally a good change, but let's talk about the implications of this and what that means for getting the best start possible. I think your two options, and keep me honest, are now still to play with a big group, but you all just start in the kingdom you're going to play in. And then I think the other option is still that sleeper migration option that you were talking about, right?
Yes, Lilith hasn't directly affected the sleeper process yet. They you still have those two options. So as an example, some other projects are going to be doing both at the same time, where they'll split their group and to have some of their leadership manage their sleepers, and then have other leaders manage the final kingdom to set a good foundation for those sleepers to come into.
Okay.
Yeah.
Got it. Now, a sleeper account, if we just sort of double click into that for a second, you're using a migration item, a passport, but the kingdom has to be a certain age before you can migrate, right?
Yes, at least 10 days old.
It has to be at least 10 days old. So unlike a jumper where it had to be like less than 10 days old, this needs to be at least 10 days old.
The thing is with the jumper, it was a little more stressful because you had to get in the kingdom within the first couple hours, and sometimes kingdoms would close up within 30 minutes.
Oh, wow.
Because there was a jumper capacity. The number floating around was 500, but Lilith never opened up about it, so that's like a unconfirmed truth. If that's
So there's
the
like a
best way to
hidden
describe
number, and like after that amount, it's just like, no, the server's full of people using these teleport items.
Yes, they closed off beginner's immigration for that kingdom.
Oh, I don't think I realized that it happened. That's sort of like an intermediary step. So if I wanted to do a sleeper, I would coordinate with a group like yours, and we'd have a sort of like a game plan of like what the final kingdom would be. I would start when you guys would tell me to start, and then I would play in that kingdom for like how long before I would plan to migrate back?
So you would play in that kingdom from anywhere to 17 to 20 days.
Okay.
Just powering up, hoarding your resources, speed ups, maybe taking a few good spots in the events in the kingdom. You would get several monument rewards from like the level 1 holy sites, level 2 holy sites, potentially the level 1 passes if the monument is quick enough. And then on day 10, and then on your 20th-ish day, you would migrate to your destination kingdom.
Okay. So I have an example up. Kingdom 3770 is 19 days and 8 hours old. So, as an example, if I was in that kingdom and my group was in a kingdom that's just over 10 days old, let's say it's 3776, that's like 11 days old. That's sort of how that would work, right? I would stay, you said it was up to 20 days and then migrate back to one that's older than 10 days.
Yeah, it has to be older than 10 days
Okay.
and within 10 days of your starting kingdom.
Oh,
Within 10
I
days of
see.
age. Yeah.
Yeah. So you could like go later, but like, why would you? It's kind of weird.
Yeah,
And
you would be missing out on some of the benefits that come with migrating on day 10.
yeah, okay. And the danger is powering up too much. And if your kingdom that you're wanting to go to flips to star, then there's a tighter migration requirement. And like you can't do anything about it because nobody's the king, right?
Yeah, you can't do anything about it until they get like special tickets and you have to hope they use it on you, but that may not happen as you get a very limited amount of special tickets.
Okay. I think I'm tracking here. Okay. So what I would personally want to do, I think, and I know there's a lot of nuance to this, but my recommendation would be that if you're planning to start, the best way to get an advantage is just to play with a good group. And hopefully that would just avoid a lot of the early game chaos and uncertainty. Some people really like that. I've got a restart account. It was just like incredibly fun to start all over and do it all over again just on a whim. But we had a group. Even that was like a group. It was like on a whim, but with a group. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if you want to get the best start possible, join a group. They will give you way more detailed and relevant instruction than I could ever give or you could ever give in this video, because this video is a snapshot of this moment in time. But obviously, as we saw from the mail changing the way that this process works, like things can change pretty quickly and a video on YouTube will be dated, whereas you'll always get the latest and greatest guidance from someone running one of these groups. In fact, not to glaze you too much, but you sent some credentials along to sort of prove like, hey, we're kind of like legit. Chill Indra had sent these. And according to the jumper community, you guys were graded in March as the #1 group to go and play with. So a score of 92.5%. The next highest score was 72.5%. I don't know how the grading is done, but like someone... What am I trying to share? I'm trying to emphasize that people put a lot of effort into restart groups and projects, so much so that there's even people who just rate them. And so you guys are rated well, and it's cool that you're sharing your expertise here. Do you have any other like tips or tricks for someone who's just getting started?
Okay, yeah. So if you're just getting started, as Chisgule said, don't do it alone. There are plenty of experienced players that would love to answer your questions. As well, at least for me, it makes me feel good. It makes me feel a little smart, being able to answer some questions. But yeah, reach out to people. They'll help you in the best ways they can. They're watch some YouTube videos, recent YouTube videos. And then let's see, take advantage of the quest lines that pop up in the early game. People tend to overlook them, but they do give loads of resources, loads of speed ups. And if you want individual account growth, go with the sleeper process. It will be much more beneficial for you in the early game, as you will get approximately a 10-day jump start on the others that started in your destination kingdom. You'll seem like a pretty big player compared to those guys.
I feel like the thing that's really cool about the sort of community dynamic of a group that's doing a start together is that you have really, really experienced players, such as yourself, that run these sorts of things that are very eager to share their knowledge and answer new player beginner questions. And the exchange there is just like really cool. It's like you have leaders that want to make groups, and you have players that are eager for coaching, and the people trying to make the groups are happy to coach, and the people that want the coaching are happy to join an experienced group that is coaching them. So like this dynamic is a part of what has made sort of starting and Rise of Kingdoms and these jumper projects really, really, really popular. And people plan them quite literally months in advance. I mean, it's the end of March and you're not going until the end of May. So, yeah, I would strongly recommend above any other piece of advice to just like find a group that has the kinds of people that want to coach you. And again, the incentive is just all there for these group leaders to be doing that kinds of coaching because like that's how they're going to get players. Anything else that you want to add about the new player process? I mean, you know, we talked very briefly kind of before this call, and you were describing to me that, you know, you're an early game enjoyer and you've done the early game many times because it's
That's
like,
correct.
you know,
Yeah.
it's very, very exciting. There's so much uncertainty and progress in the sort of first couple months. Any other thoughts that you want to share before we wrap this?
Okay, yeah. So I would like to backtrack. We did say that there was a limitation to the amount of sleepers that can go into your kingdom, but there's not a limit to the amount of people that can get into your kingdom. They set a timer. If you start getting a lot of players in, you start getting a longer and longer timer to kind of like tell these people, like incentivize these people to go elsewhere. But
Oh,
they don't just outright say you can't get here when you're using
okay.
when you're using a passport.
Yeah. Okay.
But
Interesting.
yeah, so people, so projects have taken advantage of that by having like several of their more higher quality members. Like by higher quality, I mean those that can invest more time or spend more money, and they have them kind of power up, take over that kingdom, and then they have those people come migrate over, and they're all like big, beefy, and juicy for the early game. With all their gems they've gotten from the monument events, taking all those holy sites, passes, and yeah, and they've just generally projects have been able to take over their sleeper kingdoms, or at least the sleeper groups I've been able to lead. I've been able to take my sleeper alliance to become the top one alliance before we would leave, and then I would take like half that kingdom with me to come migrate. So there's not necessarily a limit to the amount of people, but there's a limit. Like if they all just come in at once, they'll set a timer before you can get more migrates in.
Okay. How long is that timer?
Yeah.
Are we talking like minutes?
So it depends on how many people are trying to come in. I've seen people have like a 30-second timer, so like
Okay.
nothing, and then I've seen people have upwards of a few hours.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Because you are on the clock. Like the kingdoms can't get too old. Well, I guess you kind of aren't. I mean, the kingdoms are both getting older and they're within 10 days of each other. Like it's
yeah.
fine. It could
So
just take a while, right?
yeah, it's unlike with the jumper process. You aren't stressed for time in the
Right.
sense that like I have to get there right
You
now.
had to. Yeah.
It's just like on day 11 or day 12 is typically when kingdoms unlock their altars, which you want to migrate to the kingdom before that happens.
Because you
So you
want
get
those
altars
rewards.
because you want the altars a second time. You'll get them a
Yeah.
second
Yeah.
time if you're able to do that.
I mean, I think
Um,
one thing I want to emphasize, because like a new player wouldn't quite understand this, but, and you know, we'll come back to this. I had the passport bundle on the screen because I do want to talk about the best place to get passports. But you know, there are these holy sites in your home kingdom. I'm in a KVK map now, but and when you take them, they give rewards. And so a part of what you're maximizing in these sleeper sort of process is double dipping on those rewards in the kingdom you're in and in the kingdom you're going to ultimately go to. But talk to me for just a second about like where is the best place to get a passport for your migration? Because I mean, you could just buy one, right, in the shop.
yeah, so you have two options to get a passport. You either get 600,000 individual credits that you just have to grind for by playing the game, or you spend $5 a piece for $5 for every passport. Well,
Yeah.
the price goes up, but as you keep spending on the bundle, but it's $5 for the first passport.
So these individual credits you can see on my screen over here, and in the Alliance shop, it gets stocked with one for free every week for a new player, right?
Uh, Nobody told me that. You could be
That
right,
could be.
but I
So this is a
generally
newish thing. See,
yeah.
this is like what we were saying earlier. Like the process and the things change all the time. But they recently added something in the end game, anyways, where once a week you get a personal restock of a passport in your Alliance shop. Everything else in your Alliance shop has to be stocked by the officers of the Alliance, and it could be kind of tricky in a kingdom that you go to have someone stock a passport for you. So, you may need to cough up the $5 to buy a passport, and the higher your power is, the more passports you need. But presumably, people will stay under the amount of power where they just kind of need one passport, and it's easy peasy, right?
Yeah, and with that said, with being passports getting tricky, the sleeper kingdom, if you're not in your sleeper alliance, those people, the natives, they don't like you. Don't ask for a passport in the alliance in the early game. They get pretty heated pretty quickly if you do that, in
Yeah,
my
because they know you're
experience.
bailing on them, right?
Yeah, they know you're trying to leave, so they'll either verbally harass you for a good long while, or they will just outright zero you before you migrate.
Right.
Uh,
Because you're, you know, a
yeah,
sleeper is in some ways kind of mooching on the locals until they bounce.
exactly.
Yeah.
So what I've instructed from the sleeper groups I've led, what I've instructed my players to do is just tell the people in the kingdom, hey, I'm gonna go out and get resources from my farm, and you go join another alliance that you have like officer in. So like maybe the alliance your farms are actually in,
Okay.
and you
Sure.
get those farms to purchase one of those passport pages, which only costs 100,000 alliance credits. Um, so you get them to purchase those, and you buy the passports there. That's what I've instructed my sleepers to do in the
Right.
past.
So, okay. So if you're new to the game, like I was saying, Alliance officers have to stock this shop. They have to use Alliance credits to do that. Those are limited. And they cost 100,000 Alliance credits, and they cost you 600,000 individual credits to then go and buy them. But there's a lot of, as you could sort of tell, like weirdness around people figuring out that you're going to bail on them and then perhaps taking a negative action against you as a result of that. So, anyways, there's
Right.
obviously like a lot of detail here, but I think we covered the big picture, which is join a group, and if you really want edge, you do the sleeper process. RIP, rest in peace, jumper process. I think it is actually a good change for the game. And I honestly think the sleeper process probably also is potentially kind of a time limited opportunity, but I guess we'll see.
No, it definitely is.
Okay. You think it's so
Yeah,
good. It's definitely
it's
like if
it's
the
it's no, it's like so the intention I saw with the like you said earlier with the update is to even out the playing field with the inexperienced and experienced.
yeah.
Um, yeah, well, sleepers kind of just completely topple that. Sleeper counts were stronger than jumper counts, and with jumper counts gone, sleepers are 2 times as powerful as they were before. So they
Right,
are
because everybody
going.
else isn't as strong. And I guess the other
Yeah,
thing is like all the evidence in the world that you need that like that process will eventually get removed is that if people are upset when they find out that you're doing it, then like that's obviously a bad experience, right? So they're
yep,
going to get rid of it. But I don't blame players for taking advantage of mechanics that are in the game, right?
yeah.
Like it's in the
No, I
game,
don't blame
it
them at
gives you
all.
an advantage. If you don't do it, somebody else will. Like until it's removed, it's like kind of a fine thing to do. So no judgment from me on that.
Yeah, no. If you
Um,
can't beat them, join them.
well, I mean, look, if it's in the game, then like
Yeah,
it's kind of like working as intended, and it's not like it's a secret process that we're talking about here.
yeah,
People have been doing this for literally like years. So,
yeah.
and it's
No, they
still
have.
here. So, I think if it'll get addressed, then maybe it'll be sometime in the future. And if I were, you know, making changes to this game, like I would always be making changes incrementally. I think removing jumpers is probably the first step. And then, maybe the devs check in to see like, all right, did it make the game better when we got rid of that? And if it did, then like, I think that sleeper process is on its last legs.
Definitely. If this update goes as intended, the sleepers will most definitely go away.
Okay.
There's a limited time, people.
It's a limited time, which is why you should find a good group to join. So if you enjoyed the vid, throw a like on here, consider subscribing. If you're looking for a group, the Shogunate will be linked down below. And I really appreciate you and Indra taking the time to, first of all, convince me that like, hey, trust me, we have the knowledge here. And then also to share that knowledge with me. So thank you so much for doing that. I deeply appreciate it. And I look forward to maybe getting an update on how your project is going. You want to maybe check in with me down the road when you guys are kicking off?
Yeah, for sure. No, I appreciate this opportunity, man. Thank you.
Awesome, dude. Really appreciate it. All right, friends. Check out their Discord, link down below. My Discord will also be there, discord.gg/Chisgule. And I'm going to have a card off to the side over here. It's going to be a video that YouTube thinks you will enjoy. Maybe it's going to be, you know what? I'll also have one of my beginner guides over here, although I'm overdue for a new beginner guide. So I'm probably going to make one of those. And I might actually, you might hear from Vast and Chill Indra again when I go make another new player guide, to be determined. All right. Until next time, you have fun smashing your enemies. Hey, take care, everybody.